how would I avoid getting pirated in Star Citizen? Knowing what we know now and seeing what we're seeing develop. Let's say I was a cargo pilot. What would I do to avoid getting caught? Well, one of the problems with this kind of speculation, and once again, it is very much speculation, is that there are so many systems, like sensors and things like that are kind of in the game, but they're more or less like placeholders, if you know what I mean. It's there, but it's not really there. It's kind of like if you think about components within your ship. They have certain static values to them, but there's none of the dynamic ability to adjust components on the fly, really, apart from a bar, that you can drag this way or that. There's no ability to, repair them in flight. There's no ability to attach various subcomponents to get different performance profiles out of a piece of equipment on your ship. So there's kind of a placeholder system there, but it really doesn't do all that much. And so it's very difficult to see, where things are going to end up. It's kind of like if you were to make a prediction, the longer it takes for that prediction to come true, the greater the margin for error in that prediction is, right? So I think that, one of the biggest things is that if quantum remains the way that it is, and quantum interdiction remains the way that it is, the easiest way to avoid being pirated is, like, let's say you've got your cargo ship and you're saying, I'm going to go from ArcCorp to Microtech to deliver my goods. I would actually just quantum towards Crusader for about 30 seconds first, and then turn my quantum drive off with that handy dandy I key, and then turn it back on, and then just change course to go towards Microtech, and I would have pushed myself off of the line where I could be trapped by that quantum interdiction bubble. That's kind of one of the things that we've, one of the issues that we've raised, and one of the things that we've made fun of more than once, is the fact that the quantum interdiction, the idea of pulling somebody out of quantum, the current mechanic, is laughable. That it even exists in the game, that someone came up with this and said, oh, this is a good idea. It's like, do you know math? Because I don't think that you do. And hey, I was no math genius in high school or anything like that, but I understand basic geometry enough to go that'll never work. So yeah, just pushing yourself off center a little bit when you're going towards your destination, that pretty much removes, or it doesn't make it impossible, but it makes it so unlikely that it for all intents and purposes, it more or less makes it impossible that someone could interdict you in that way, unless you were just being lazy. And even then, if you think about ArcCorp, it's a planet that rotates, so your point of origin is still going to be massively displaced from wherever somebody, chose that course when they tried to set up your interdiction. On your map, it'll look like a straight line, but that straight line is, even viewed on that map that zoomed out, is probably 100,000 kilometers thick, So a little 10-kilometer bubble in 100,000 kilometers, you'd have to win the unlucky lottery just to get interdicted. But let's say they change it and they make it much broader so that it draws people in from a much wider area. Well, one of the things that, Tony Zurvek often talks about is the idea that at some point in the game, and, as pirates, we're always excited to hear about this. At some point in the game, NPC haulers are going to start turning up in space. And so we can actually pirate. We can actually stop ships and steal all their cargo, and then hopefully have a black market that allows us to sell it all in one go, that sort of thing. A lot of these things, little pieces of it, are there, but the full functional system is just not in the game yet. It's not all of it has been tied together, and one of the big things is, of course, being able to steal cargo out of haulers with ship-based tractor beams, because if you have to steal the cargo out of a large cargo ship with just a little handheld tractor beam, that's going to take a long time. So that's one of the things that needs to change. But even even if you have that wider quantum interdiction field where you can pull ships in from much further away and kind of pull them towards you, so to speak, even if they implemented something like that, let's say NPC cargo haulers do show up in the game, and once again you're making that trip from ArcCorp to Microtech with your very valuable cargo, I would look for the NPC haulers making the same trip. And what I would do is I would pick a quantum drive that's obviously more efficient because it would save you money in the long term, and that's what you're there to do, is make money. But a little bit slower as well, maybe something with a very quick turnaround time, cool down and boom, ready to spool right up and go again. I would pick a quantum drive like that, and I would wait for NPC haulers to make the same trip, and I'd leave maybe about 20-30 seconds after them, maybe as much as a minute, and depending on the differential in speed. If pirates are sort of like camping that area and they see something like a hull E or a hull D get snagged, and then they see you and your little Caterpillar or your Mercury Star Runner or whatnot coming in behind them, they're probably going to be too busy with that big target to come after you. And even if you do, especially if you're in something like a Caterpillar or an MSR, you're going to be so quick. And if you've got a good quantum drive, your turnaround's going to be really quick, and you're just going to be able to bounce right out of that quantum interdiction field and get out of there, because the interdiction ship is probably not going to follow you because they want to keep the big thing locked down while they try to kind of pound down its shields and steal tens of millions of worth of cargo compared to your maybe $1 million in your hold. They're going to do the math really quickly, and even if they wanted to go after you, chances of them reacting fast enough to kind of snare you, pretty unlikely, right? So that's kind of one of the ways that I would use an in-game system like NPC haulers to give myself a better advantage. It's sort of like if someone is shooting at a crowd, as a member of that crowd, you're less likely to get hit than if you were just running out there solo, right? Now, another thing to think about is, don't make yourself a target. And like most people who, complain about being pirated or, rage about this kind of stuff, they made themselves targets. They made it easy. And, you might think that, oh, no, that's not true. And it's like, no, they're entirely complicit in the act. They played a part. Yes, someone took the choice to commit an offensive act in the game, but someone made that offensive act possible in the first place, right? Some people might say wrong place, wrong time, but you have to learn that you have a part to play in that. You have a role in that, in that act of piracy, whether you see it or not. Like, one of the things that you have to think about is, if I'm at Grim Hex and I see that there's shooting going on outside of the station, maybe it's not a good time to undock my ship. If someone in local is complaining about pad rammers, maybe this is not the time to, go to that station with my cargo. Maybe it's a good time to test to see if logging out in beds works in this patch or not. Maybe it's time to just chill. When the game gets more reliable, a lot of these things are going to work. And I mean, you might log out in your bed and then just go back to main menu and then log back into the game, and you may find yourself in a different layer where those players who are doing that thing are just not there, and you can just look at local chat and say, oh, do I recognize these names or not? No, I don't recognize them. So that danger is likely gone. There's a lot of little things that you can do as a player defensively to protect yourself. I mean, we were talking about reaction times, and someone pulls you out of quantum. Well, what if you build your ship, even a cargo ship, to have the lowest signature possible, while at the same time giving buying the sensors that give you the best passive, emphasis on the word passive, detection capability? What you're effectively doing in a situation like that is you're lowering the reaction time for the person who's trying to get you, while at the same time increasing your reaction time to the person who's trying to hunt you, you're going to see them a lot sooner, which gives you more time to react, and they're going to see you a lot later, which gives them less time to react, right? You have to learn how to be evasive. You have to learn how to stack the deck for yourself. And you have to look at game mechanics and not just go like, oh, well, this is it at face value. You have to look at different facets of the game and the way different systems work and how to abuse those to give yourself the best possible, chance for success. I often, I quote an example from playing WoW during BFA. One of the ways that I was able to hunt and kill so many Alliance players so easily is that I abused in-game mechanics. And I remember there was one player alone. Like, there was a point where it was like 20 or 30 Alliance players were all hunting me, and I was marked on the map as an assassin. So they were all going after me to try and loot my bounty to get, the big rewards that you would get from killing a player who was flagged as an assassin. You were marked on the map as well, on the horizontal, not on the vertical. And that's an important thing. But what I did is I used, an in-game item that basically gave players access to a version of the druid's swim form so that I could swim at full speed. But I was also a rogue, so I could also go into stealth. And so even though they had my horizontal position on the map, they didn't have my vertical. And so what I would do is I would go down into the water in this area. It was in PIRACY where I was doing this. But I did it in Zandalar as well. But I would go down underneath the water and I would just swim around at full speed with stealth on. So they knew vaguely where I was on the map. They didn't know exactly where I was. And the only unit or class in the game that had, active stealth detection couldn't swim fast enough to chase me, because most players never did the missions in Legion to get, the item, which was, I believe it's called the Underlight Angler achievement, or, the fishing rod that would allow you to do that. They couldn't figure out where I was. And there was one player in particular who, created a character on the Horde side just so that he could whisper me to tell me that I was about to be banned because he had reported me for, cheats and exploits, because they couldn't find me when they were trying to hunt me down. And I laughed at him. And I was like, I wasn't cheating, I wasn't exploiting. I was just using in-game mechanics to give myself the best advantage possible. And I actually told the player exactly how I did that. And I ended up on his Discord server screen sharing and showing him how it worked. And we, it was, in the beginning, he was convinced that I was a cheater, but at the end of it, we were laughing about it, and he was like, that is like the smartest stuff that I've ever seen. That was just crazy. Like, we were all on a PvP Discord, World PvP Discord together, and we were all talking. We were like, this guy's cheating. He's he's evil. Oh, report him. Everybody report him. He's a hacker. Blah 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 blah. And he was like, and the whole time you were just using the fishing rod. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, that's crazy. And he ended up doing it himself too, which is really funny. But in any game, there are going to be mechanics that, it requires a little extra effort. It requires you to, go that extra mile as a player to kind of get these things. And you have to realize that that's what makes the difference between like a so-so or a mediocre player and a good player, is that willingness to go that extra mile, to get that extra little, what some people might say, oh, it's not that big a deal. No, the devil's in the details. It's oftentimes some like little things that you may not even think of. When you hear about emergent gameplay or people abusing in-game mechanics, it's because someone looked at something and said, I wonder what the unintended uses for that could be. And you can pull off some really great things. I mean, just using WoW as an example, I could rattle off a few things that I've done that sadly aren't possible in the game anymore, but that were a lot of fun. But when you really get into the game mechanics of a game, you can find so many cool little things like that. And there is a certain value, even in a PvP world. There's a certain fun to being the person that, maybe you're not the person out there who kills all the other players, but what if you're the player that no one else can catch? Like we were talking about these PvP bounties, last month, and being hunted, and I was showing this in videos. But if you think about it, if I'm running around in my ship, quantuming around, and no one can ever catch me, and other pirates are doing the same thing. Eventually players are going to get to the point where they're like, the PvP bounties, like hunting down these pirates just isn't worth it. There's NPCs over here that I can just farm, and I know exactly where they are and where they're going to be. And it's not really a risk or reward thing. It's a reward versus time spent thing. Most players are just going to step away from that, and they're going to say, you know what, it's just not worth it. And so pirates get to go out and pirate, and players are just like, what's the point? Being kind of like, you end up being kind of like the Roadrunner in the old Roadrunner cartoons. Meet me, and you're gone. Like, there's a value to that. When you think about, like, people think about it as like, oh, you're running away, you lose. No, running away and surviving, you win. Because that person was out there trying to hunt you down and kill you. Being able to consistently escape, that's a win. Because you're denying that person their objective. Think about it like if you're a Star Trek fan, right? I'm sure there's one or two of you out there. Maybe not the new stuff, but the older stuff. But you remember the episode where Data had to fight that weird 3D chess battle with that dude with that sniveling dude who was like supposedly like a master at stratagema. That was the game. And in the first battle against the guy, he lost. But then his strategy the next time was to basically fight to a stalemate and just to prolong the fight as long as possible. He wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to deny victory to the other guy, and the other guy got so frustrated by this that he just couldn't win the battle, that he ended up just throwing his hands up in the air and walking away, just like, I give up. And in the end, Data won. Why? Because he just did the unthinkable thing, which is like, I'm not fighting to win. I'm just fighting to deny you the win. And that's the way you got to kind of think about things in a PvP game. It's not always just about like, oh, I'm going to pawn this guy, I'm wrecked, haha. It's not about that. It's about denying wins to the other guy. As a pirate, you have to sit there and say, I think there's a glitch in the Matrix here. But as a pirate, part of it isn't just like shooting down somebody who's a mercenary working for old Johnny Law. It's about making sure that their investment in time and effort yields no reward. That's the ultimate win, because that makes them more likely to just give up on this career pursuit and go after something else. So yeah, those are my thoughts. That's how, like, if I was a cargo hauler, that's how I would go about making myself more difficult to pirate, or more likely to survive and make a profit. My opinion. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.